African Day held in The Hague, the Netherlands. This is a day for Africans and non-Africans.
It's my home. It's my continent. The first thing that comes to my mind.
People. Beautiful country, beautiful people.
Nice foods.
Disorder and war.
Strong women.
When you say Africa, I think of home, you know. I think of a lovely place, a warm place, a friendly place.
Warm people. That's the first thing that comes to mind, and just very loving people.
Greatest continent to visit. Many friends. A better climate than the Netherlands, but more seriously, a continent that has enormous potential and it's going in the right direction, and it's very unfortunate that the financial economic crisis has hit Africa so hard.
I immediately think about nature. I think about the plains of Zambia, South Africa. I think about the jungle of Congo. I think about all the animals I've seen there, and I think about the most beautiful continent there is in the world.
But I also think of sometimes the problems that we have in Africa, you know.
I am free to love who I want and who I desire, no matter the color of his skin.
Richness in culture, in riches, and a lot of happiness.
Africa, well, I guess traditionally I think of a very exotic country and some place that's very far away from me, that sort of is almost in another world, in another realm. But I think these days, actually, and certainly being here, that's changing quite a bit.
Solidarity among the people, and the good spirits, the optimism which you find when you're living there or when you travel there.
Beauty, but also a lot of problems, corruption, poverty, but also opportunity.
Oh, people, just always more people, lots of children, very fast population growth, baby boom. You know, there's just Africa's becoming more and more important just by the number of people there.
I've been there often, and the main thing I love about it is the people, because they're so generous and so inviting and very open-minded.
People of power, people of strong conviction, that really have vision to move forward without the means.
When you say Africa, I see a nice place to be, you know. It's warm there, it's friendly. Good resources, natural food, you know, nothing artificial. Yeah, so when you say Africa, that's what I think. But then I also think of those in the rural areas who are really yet to be reached, and yeah.
Well, Africa is a lovely continent. I'm from Africa, and I think Africa is one of the best continents in the world. So every time I hear the word Africa, I feel special because that's where I'm from.
I can tell Africa is full of daughters. And they may not be perfect, but they're all capable of greatness.
But I think Africa is progressing, and in the next 20 years, I think Africa will be better. And we hope for that. That's why Africa is producing a lot of young, strong leaders, you know, that will carry Africa into that promise.
Where do I see Africa in 20 years?
In the 20 years.
Whoa, that's a difficult question.
It's a very difficult question.
A developed Africa with with more democratic Africa, a fair Africa, but also the world treating Africa more fair.
I think it will be more developed because there are a lot of opportunities for local people in business-wise, and I think it's very important that there's more interest now for the private sector, and I think it's going to have a great impact.
I think that maybe days like today won't be necessary, that Africa will be seen as a country that's just in line with everybody else in the world.
In 20 years there'll still be a lot of people from Africa being in Holland, and we will also, hopefully we will still be working with Africa, but just on different grounds and different reasons. So there'll still be an African Day, but maybe a little bit different.
Depending on what is done, how it is done, I see Africa far in 20 years.
I think Africa is going to conquer the world. We can talk of Africa as a geographical space, but if I think of Africans and where they are in the world today, in 20 years I have every hope that Africans are going to be shining. Obama has already set the example.
If it continues like this, it will be a country governed by dictators only. That's all.
The level of development right now in most African countries, it is on a level that we will probably still need a day like this in 20 years from now, but I hope that in 20 years from now we have more to celebrate and less to discuss.
I think it'll be much more important than it is now, partly just because of the sheer growth in numbers of people in Africa, and also because it's becoming very important for business in Asia, particularly in China.
The civil actions become more and more important. In the meantime, economic growth is starting. There's a takeoff in many countries. Clearly, the world needs Africa, not just for their resources, but also for the power Africa has as a continent of hope. And South Africa is an important player there in the new architecture of the world. I'm sure that in 20 years we will see many more of these signs, and it will be a better place than today.
Within 20 years, I see Africa, the continent Africa, compared to like Europe and America. Because I live half my life in Europe and America. I'm currently living in the US. So 20 years from now, I look forward to seeing Africa like Europe and America.
In 20 years' time, I hope to see Africa at a stage Europe was in like maybe 20 years ago, because now we are like 100 years back.
But I think in 20 years' time we will think of Africa differently. We won't really think about it as being a developing continent. I'm sure it will have a lot of problems, but I think we'll think of it much more in terms of another part of the world that we can relate to, not just as developing countries.
I think it has the potential to be one of the most important continents in the world when it gets its acts together, and when we are continuing to support fairer trade and more predictable capital flows to Africa. There is money in Africa in the informal sector with people. There are enormous amount of organizations, but you have to grasp your chance.